Welcome back to another Microsoldering Wednesday. My name is Derek, and today I'm going to be going over some basic techniques that might help you get into the soldering game. Microsoldering is one of those skills that isn't really too hard to start to learn because there are a lot of repairs that are quite simple and are common, so you will get a lot of practice with these repairs, like charge ports, for example, on iPads. It's very common for them to be soldered directly to the motherboard, which means you need to be able to desolder them to solder a new one on. And there are a wide range of techniques to make this happen. The repair that I'm going to be tackling today is an Apple Watch Series 6 40mm that saw some water damage, and it corroded the battery and battery connector. The battery connector itself is on a flex cable that is soldered directly to the logic board. So the easiest thing to do in this case is to replace that flex cable. These techniques that I'm going to show you can be implemented across a wide variety of repairs. And it's not the only way, so if you end up experimenting, you might find a different technique or something that you prefer to do in a different way. Here's how I like to do it. Let's get into the video. Alright, so looking under the microscope here, so this is the Apple Watch Series 6 40mm. And going through it, I found some evidence of water damage, especially on the battery and the battery connector. And one of the things that it's done, if we zoom down in on there, you can see the pins are kind of popping out of the connector. But if you look at this side of the connector, it really kind of corroded away the metal that should be on that corner there. And so this entire connector needs to be replaced. And although technically it's replaceable, it is much easier just to replace the flex cable itself. So here I have a flex cable that has a good battery connector, as you can see. You can see that we have 10 solder joints on this section of the flex and another 14 over on this side. So there's a little bit of soldering that goes into this, but it's actually easier than you might think. The first thing that I'm going to do is pop up this sticker here. Alright, so we'll lift this sticker off. And now you can see the solder joints there. Get this flex out of the way. Okay, so now this flex cable is isolated. Not only does it have the solder joints making contact, but it also has adhesive and I'm under the orange part here of the flex. So you can't just go and pull this off. You might potentially pull the pads up if you do that. And replacing the pads on Apple Watches is extremely difficult. So we'll go ahead and desolder that. We'll add some flux. We'll take some tweezers. We're going to put a little bit of tension on the flex cable, kind of lifting at it. And then with my soldering iron, I'm going to come in and we'll heat up the flex by touching the solder joints. And I'm just going to make little circles and the solder will release and so will the flex at the same time. And this method can be done on iPads. It can be done on any flex that has like this through hole type of technology. So all of your iPad charge ports are like this. Almost every single flex cable on an Apple Watch is like this. So I've got those first 10 popped up. Let's move on to the second set. These 14 here. You can see kind of the solder pulls through a little bit and gets onto the gold portion and turns it silver. Some of these might be grounder pads on the board, which means they take a little bit more heat to release. It's starting to go now. Almost there. There we go. And it pops off. So you can get a side-by-side difference between a connector that has had no water contact versus one that has had contact. So, alright, now to put this back, what I'm going to do is I've got some 183 solder paste. You can use solder wire, you can use and you can use different temperatures of solder, but I'm just going to put a bit of solder down on these pads. And I'm going to fluff up the pillows of the pads, is what I like to call it, with solder. So as you'll see, it'll become like little mounds of solder on the joints there. And there we go. The next step, I'm going to come in with some isopropyl alcohol and just take a Q-tip and I'm going to
scrub away all of the flux and the old adhesive that was left holding that flex down. And while I'm in here, I'll kind of scrub up a little bit of this corrosion as well. Now I'm going to take a little bit of flux and we'll add it down there. And one thing that I like to do as well is put a teeny bit on these little gold squares. You'll see why in a second, but these gold squares right here are what we're going to use to align the new flex. So if we zoom down on in here, what we can see through this little window here, we'll be able to see the little gold mark. And there's a little X in each one of these little windows here that we need to line up with that gold square. So it's kind of hard to see, but the gold and the cross are lined up down in there. So now all I have to do is go over each one of these joints and push it down into the solder. We'll do it again to kind of flatten out the flex. So now we'll just go and make sure that this lines up, and it does. I can see that when I compress this, that the little square comes into view. Kind of hard to see it, but because it's so small there. But you can see the gold kind of coming through there on that little plus symbol. So we'll push down the flex and we'll solder it all on. And now that that's all soldered on, come in with some isopropyl alcohol and let's clean up all of the flux. And I'll take the sticker and we'll stick it back. Now I have a bit more work to do still on this watch. Obviously, I just need, one of the things will be cleaning up this border and double checking anywhere else I saw a little bit of corrosion. But that gives you a general idea of a basic solder job that anyone can do.
Well, there you have it, a super simple repair. Now, of course, you'll need the equipment and preferably a way to magnify what you're doing on something this small like a microscope. The flex cable for iPad charge ports are large enough that you really don't need to magnify them. You can get away with doing it with just your eye if you've got decent vision. I'd still recommend that you do it under a microscope. Leave any comments below if you have a different way or a way that you think is better. Also, let me know what you'd like to see in upcoming videos. Thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you in the next video.